Ready?
We're ready.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Town of Port Royal January 10th special meeting. First item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand and face the flag. Kevin, can you lead us, please?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Darius, can you lead us in prayer?
Oh, Father, we thank you for this opportunity as we assemble before you in your presence. We thank you for the business that we are about to conduct, that it's done in accordance with and well-pleasing to you, and for the betterment of our town in which we serve. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. Thank you. Good evening again, everybody. The purpose for this special meeting is interview for boards and commission for the Town of Port Royal. We have two boards and commissions. One is Park and Recreation, and the other is the Redevelopment Commission. We're going to be interviewing applicants for both of those tonight. And the first interview that we're going to be doing is Park and Rec, Karen Nederson. Karen, can you come forward? Introduce yourself.
I'm Karen.
Not for this one, it's not yours.
Do I face them or you?
Face us.
Okay.
Hold it.
Do I really need that?
For the people that are watching online.
The World Wide Web's watching.
Thank you. My name's Karen Nederson. I moved here to Port Royal just about a year ago for the fifth time.
Wow.
Fifth time to Beaufort.
Okay, so,
Should.
yeah, tell us a little about yourself and why you want to be on the committee.
Okay. First of all, I was the youngest. The middle child was favorite in my family, trust me. She knows it too. My husband was a Marine. We met in college, and we were stationed here 3 times over his career, and then Hawaii and Southern California and Texas and Florida. And then he retired. We went to St. Louis for 11 years, and then we retired back to Arkansas and built on our land we owned on a lake, and then he died. So I moved back here because this is where I liked living the best. And then I was here for a year and a half, and my son-in-law's Army, and he got a 2-year unaccompanied assignment to Korea, so I sold my house and moved up to North Carolina to help my daughter with the kids. And she had her own business, and then COVID killed her business, so I said, I'm going back to Beaufort because I don't like North Carolina. So here I am.
And why the
That's
park?
about
Why the Park and Rec Commission?
I was raised outside pretty much, even in Michigan. Grew up in Michigan until I was 13 when we moved to Arkansas. And unless it was below 0, we were outside. I had no brothers, just 2 sisters. And we had a beautiful pond that the Jaycees took control of, put lights up for us. They'd come out and check the depth of the ice and everything. We'd go ice skating and until we couldn't stand the cold anymore and come home, and Mom would have a big pot of hot chocolate made, real hot chocolate. Me and my buddy Lori, on Saturdays, we'd pack us a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and we were off in the woods for hours on end until almost dark. And nobody worried about us back then. So my love of outdoors goes back to that. And my dad took me hunting with him once. He took me squirrel hunting, but all he let me do was carry the stick with the dead squirrels. So I never went again. But still, we lived near Greers Ferry Lake in northern Arkansas. So, if we weren't in school, we were at the lake. We were outside. We were basically not allowed to play inside, hardly at all. Mom was a school teacher. Daddy was a factory worker. We didn't have money. And that's just the way we were raised. We were raised outside with the dogs.
Very good. So what do you see for the Town of Port Royal Parks?
Well, I'm really interested in the fitness trail. I've got a lot of thoughts on that. I've lived in places where there have been fitness trails that I thought were well done and some were not so well done. Part of the problem with some of them is the equipment is too big for shorter people. I like the amount of time I see the kids outside here, up and down the streets, all over the place. It's South Carolina. You got to be outside. And it's getting more and more, like you're saying, with the computers. The kids are sitting at home with their computers. Even when my grandkids come over to my house, they're on the TV or on the computer. And I keep saying, we're going. Come on, we're going. Of course, with Kevin, I have to bribe him with ice cream sometimes, but, you know.
Those Kevins.
I know.
Said it is to Kevin.
Love our ice cream.
Well, council have any questions?
I got a few.
Go right ahead.
How'd you hear about this position?
I think I saw it in the weekly newsletter that came out the first time. This was the first time I,
What do you like the most about our town, Port Royal?
it is the friendliest place I've ever lived. It truly is, and I've, as you can see, I've lived in a lot of places. And just the welcoming, Debbie, I love Debbie to death. I mean, I could name several women, but I won't do it. But just, I don't think I've ever felt as welcome in a place as I have since I moved here. I really don't. Even living in Laurel Bay when my husband was active duty, you know, we were forced together. We had to be friends. But this is different. There really aren't a whole lot of words I can come up with to explain it. I just feel like I'm finally home. And I promised my daughter I'm not moving again until it's over into the nursing home. That's it. I'm not moving again.
If you had a magic wand and could change one thing about Port Royal, what would it be?
Does the weather count? I'd like it to be this temperature year-round.
Okay.
You might get some argument with that. You might get a little bit of pushback.
If I could change one thing in Port Royal, I don't know.
That's fine.
I don't know.
That's fine. That's fine. What's one thing that you've learned from COVID, that COVID has taught you in the past, since COVID's been here? A couple of years.
You got to be careful with that subject. I guess to not take for granted being outside. Just then the time I was, the year when it first started, I was in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and I was living in an apartment because I knew it wasn't permanent. I wasn't going to buy a house. And I was stuck in that apartment for the quarantining. And it was horrible. It was just horrible. They shut down our facility. We couldn't use the pool. We couldn't use the weight room, you know. So just, it made me appreciate and want to be outside even more.
Okay. Do you have any questions you'd like to ask us?
No.
I don't have any other questions.
Oh, you do? What asset do you think you would really bring to the table for the park?
I think just enthusiasm for being out there. Like I said, I'm really excited about helping if I could help with the fitness trail. I don't know if as a volunteer I would have any input, but even if I just went out there and did nothing but wipe down whatever's out there or rake leaves, I don't care. I just like being outside. I can teach if people are down there. I mean, I'm not a certain, my daughter is, her bachelor's degree is a fitness degree, which escapes me right now. She was a personal trainer for a while. Health medicine, I think is what it was, or sports medicine. Anyway, I have a background in counseling and therapy, so sometimes that comes in handy, sometimes it doesn't. Depends on the person.
Fair.
Ms. Nederson, I thank you for your willingness to serve. And, but I have only one. I read your bio, and it's good, of course. But what attribute do you possess that would make you the best candidate for this position?
Again, I would say my enthusiasm. I don't care if it's raining. I'll be out there. If I'm needed outside, I'll be out there in the rain. I love coming up with ideas of things to do, like along with the fitness trail, maybe a Frisbee course or something. I've seen those in several places I've lived. I've never tried it. That's a hard question.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Kevin, you good?
I'm good.
Well, we want to thank you so much for being willing to step forward and join one of our commissions, especially the Park and Rec Commission. And like I said in the beginning, we're going to go ahead and do the actual voting. We'll be at our Wednesday council meeting. It'll be this Wednesday to do that. And if you have nothing else for us, we thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Thank you
good
for being
night.
here.
Oh, yes.
So the next is the redevelopment commission. We have 5 seats that we're going to be filling for the redevelopment commission. As I stated earlier, what we're going to do is ask you all to step out of the room. We're going to be, everybody's name is in a hat, I luckily wear a hat. We're going to be drawing them one at a time, and come on back in, and then you'll have your time with us. I'll go ahead and draw the first name now, so you don't have to walk out and walk right back in. We'll be a little bit efficient. And Rand, you get to hang around.
Whoa.
First one is Rand Ward. Thank you, everybody.
Testing, 1, 2.
Very good. We're just going to go ahead and close the door, Ram. So, Rand, you're in a unique position. You were on our former redevelopment commission. You know that what has happened is we have refocused the redevelopment commission. We've narrowed the scope in some ways only by geography, not what it is that they're going to be doing. But we're asking the redevelopment commission this time around to focus on what we're calling the bridge to Burger King. So it's Reboat Road corridor where we believe, the council believes, a lot of redevelopment needs to occur, and we need to understand what's happening in that area. So we're asking everybody who wants to participate to come and tell us, a little bit about yourself and why and what you think is important about that. So it's your turn.
Okay, Rand Ward, and I've lived here either this month or next month, 20 years. Retired military, been around the world, done a lot of things, seen a lot of places. But we settled on Port Royal because we like the town, we like the ambiance, we like the eclectic aspect. Some new, some old, some wealthy, some not so wealthy, but it's a good blend. And right now, change is imminently upon us in a huge way in Port Royal, and that change, being the port, is certainly going to impact Rebo and surrounding area. And I think it's very important that those of us who care about the town get involved, see if we can't keep that ambiance. Obviously, the change is coming, and you can't stop it, but maybe we can at least soften the impact a little bit so that we don't lose ourselves and become another Mount Pleasant, which used to be just a great town. And now you can hardly drive through it in less than an hour. But, I'm just would like to be a part of it. I feel like either you take part in it or you accept what you get. And I'm prepared to step up and do my best. I feel like I come up with some good ideas once in a while and can think out of the box a little bit. Sometimes that's important. But I think I'm also equally balanced. I'm not biased one way or another, and I've got nothing to gain financially or anything like that. It's just all about the town.
Very good. Council, I'll let you go first this time.
Go ahead, start.
Kevin, Mary Beth?
No questions, just thanks for, I know you were on it last time, coming back to be on it again, I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're going to have to throw me off.
There are term limits, but we have ways around them too.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, because we have certainly enjoyed you being on our board, and you've done a great job, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you continue on that board and
Thank you.
do what you can do. We know what you're all about and that you truly are about the town, and we do appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you for your willingness to continue to serve.
This is getting to be an annual event. This is, right at Christmas every year, so.
So I got just a handful of questions, if you'll allow me. Tell us about a time you worked in a group or you worked on a board here in Port Royal. Tell us about that. Tell us about the experience. Tell us what you learned.
Well,
Any group, any board, any organization you worked on for the town. Talk about that for a little bit.
this is kind of the first board that I've worked on in Port Royal, but I've worked on other boards and I've worked on other programs in other parts of the world. And you had to interact with people, and you had to be able to convince people that sometimes didn't agree with you, and violently in some cases. But, as long as you keep a level head and try to see through what's right, you can work with people. And I think coming to a common ground is what's important.
I was thinking, I'd had you down for working on the short-term rental task force.
I did do that, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I was hoping you'd give us some insight into that. And how'd that go? And tell us what you learned there.
Wow.
Put them on the spot.
Really, all honesty, I was a little bit shocked that that task force was in that depth of involvement in the businesses. But we went through it, and again, there was those who had opposing opinions, but we worked through it and came to a point, and everybody presented their case, and it came to a vote, and in my case, it was a win. In some places it wasn't, people didn't agree, but
Worked with a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different temperaments on that board, I remember.
there was a lot of different temperaments in the audience as well,
That's right.
It was unique.
What do you like most about Port Royal?
What I like about Port
What
Royal?
do you like the most? What's one thing you like the most?
Well, right now, I think, and I don't know this for a fact, but it seems like it's one of the very, very few, if not the only, small seaside town with a quaint small town atmosphere. And I like that, and that's why we moved here. And like I said, I don't want to see it get out of control so that we lose that. And I think that if we focus on our corridor and we bring in businesses that support that we need, not just something, but businesses that will contribute to that, I think that in the long run, we'll be a lot better off.
What type of businesses could you, looking at, what would you see on that? Would you see big box stores? Would you see mom and pop? What would you see out there?
Well, I'm not sure mom and pop's the way to go right now. If it is, it is, But there's some specialty stores like Trader Joe's or World Market that a lot of people seek those out, and they come. And our corridor is not, everything that's on there is not eye-appealing, and it's not, I would bulldoze it if I could. But at the same time, you know what to replace it with, and I think if we replace it with the kind of businesses and that are going to draw people here, if they come in, they're going to see other things, and they're going to, there's a lot of reasons why people are moving here,
Right.
and we don't want to lose that,
Yeah. What's one thing you've learned coming out of COVID? What's one thing this whole last 2 years have taught you?
What? Say it again, please.
What have you learned from COVID? What is one thing the past 2 years have taught you? The way we interact, the way we do social distancing, what's one thing you've learned? What's COVID taught you?
I had COVID. I had a pretty severe case of COVID. But at the same time, I don't think COVID is as severe as our government is trying to make us believe. I think that the new strands that are coming through are weaker, but I think the evidence is showing now that once you get it, you kind of build an immunity and not having shots every week. Now, I understand social distancing, but most of the masks that people wear, and I'm just being honest with you, don't do squat. They're nothing. They don't block it in or out. It's nothing more than a compliance. And there are places where it's nice, but people need masks that are effective. So I think we've overreacted to COVID a little bit, not just here, but everywhere.
Right.
And I don't know, I'm a little bit, that's the right word. I'm not convinced that COVID is the monster.
That's fine. I got 2 or 3 last questions, and I'll wrap it up. What can you bring to this position? What can you bring to this board?
I can bring a sincere desire to make Port Royal better in a positive way. I can bring the fact that I really care about the town and the people. And like I say, who knows, sometimes I come up with good ideas.
There you go. I got one last question. It's a trick question now.
Trick one?
Trick question. Describe yourself in one word.
Golly.
Nope. Golly.
Wonderful.
You have any questions you'd like to ask us? Humble, right? You have anything you'd like to ask us?
No. Kind of been here and done it. I would like the opportunity to do it, and if it doesn't work out, then we'll get somebody else.
No, I appreciate you being. I appreciate your willingness to serve our country and our willingness to serve our community. I sat in on a lot of the, on most of the short-term rental meetings, a lot of different personalities, but I like how you handled yourself in that. I know some of these questions I asked you tonight were kind of a little weird. You said you were an out-of-the-box kind of guy, so you can appreciate the kind of questions I asked you, because some of those are kind of out of the box, if you will.
Yeah, and I spoke with you, answered them candidly, you know, not, maybe you didn't make everybody happy, but that's the way I feel.
Just
So,
gives you a good opportunity, gives me an idea of how, because we've got just a short window to make a decision on people on this committee. So it's almost like a little snapshot to look into somebody, to see how they can talk to people, how they can react to questions, how they can act on their feet. And I think you answered very well, so thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
Thank
Right,
you.
but actually, I've got a question or two.
Sure.
When thinking about that Reboat Road corridor, what would you think it would take to kind of slow the cars down and actually look and see what businesses are along that corridor?
Obviously, we're gonna need a light, coming off that bridge. People are coming very, very quickly, but they used to have to stop for the train and different things, so I mean, that's not a new thing, it can be done. But, you know, to try to get out onto Rebo unless you're at the light, it can be demanding, it's like playing Frogger, you know?
Right.
You remember that game? You're old if you remember that game.
You see Joe shaking his head, you see me shaking my head.
Kevin doesn't.
I remember.
I've seen it, I read
But,
about it.
I read about it on the internet, right?
Anyway, you know, I think there's gonna have to be some traffic control because traffic's gonna get worse. Just the people and the buildings and whatnot that's about to happen in Port Royal, traffic's gonna be worse. So there's got to be some control method of people getting in and out. And if not, then everybody's just gonna be charging out and charging in. It's gonna be dangerous.
Well, thank you. You've answered a lot of my other questions and the other things that you said. That was the last one I had. We appreciate your willingness to serve again, willingness to come before us tonight and take the time to do this. And if you have nothing else, if you could ask Timothy Ball to come on in.
Thank you, Rand.
Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Well done, sir.
Mr. Ball, you have been requested to the presence of this esteemed group.
There you go.
And
He
those
just got more
things be
points.
clear.
Tim, thank you for being willing to come forward and putting your name in the hat for our redevelopment commission. And the reason this redevelopment commission is being seated, 5 new members are being seated on this, is because we took a look at the redevelopment commission and we refined what it is and focused them in on a specific area geographically. Not what it is that they do, but where it is that they do that. And we're looking for a group of people that are willing to take a look at what we're calling Bridge to Burger King, the Reboat Road corridor, and take a look at that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let council ask questions first and run through them and ask you some questions. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about you, and we'll go from there.
Okay. Well, yes, I would like to be considered for one of the open positions on the redevelopment committee. I think you may have my resume in front of you, but if not, I will highlight the fact that I have been in government service for over 40 years in both state and local positions. Most of my experience has been in law enforcement investigations, but on the side, I have bought several depressed properties and renovated them for profit and or for rents. Additionally, I have a master's degree in criminal justice planning and evaluation from the University of Tennessee, and I'm a dissertation short of a PhD in public administration from Nova Southeastern University in Florida. I feel I'm prepared to serve in this position, not so much because of my credentials, but because of my sincere love of Port Royal. For me and my wife Debbie, it was love at first sight, so much so that we sold all that we owned in Tennessee and invested it all here in Port Royal. I would personally like to see Port Royal grow and prosper, but I feel that we should be careful to balance the growth with a commitment to to maintain the Mayberry by the Sea sense of community, and also Port Royal's historic roots. And I'll be honored to serve in this position if you choose me.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions.
Okay.
I don't have
Meredith?
any.
Darrell?
Actually, I don't also, but I'll just ask, just to be consistent, the same that I asked the other. What attributes do you possess that makes you the best candidate for this position?
Well, I mentioned that we invested all in Port Royal. That shows a sincere desire to see Port Royal to be all it can be. And it doesn't mean to see it turn into a Bluffton or even a Beaufort, but to be all it can be for the people that grew up here and appreciate what it is and what it has been. I think that's the calling card for this community, is that when you drive down Paris Avenue, it's like, wow, this is where you want to live. And it's that sense of community, and I don't want to lose that. But at the same time, we want to see our property values go up. We want to see progress and manage that. And I don't know if I am the most credentialed person in that area of redevelopment, but I'm going to learn, and I'm going to do the best I can to help us to be all that we can be.
Good deal. Oh, my turn?
It is your turn, sir.
How long have you lived in Port Royal?
Approximately 3 years.
How did you hear about this position?
I think I just heard it through the grapevine. I don't remember seeing a specific thing on the internet or anything, but I just heard through the grapevine that there was going to be they were doing away with the old redevelopment committee and coming up with a new plan and a new development committee. It's going to have a steering committee and be focused on certain areas.
Right.
So
you talk about your love for Port Royal. Tell me, what is the one thing you love the most about Port Royal?
sense of community.
Nice.
You
Very
know,
nice.
I know y'all know my wife. I mean, she walks every day, and she doesn't know a stranger. And I'd be out there with her if I wasn't working, but every day she comes home with a new story about how much she loves the people here in Port Royal, and it's just a great place to live.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to die here.
She sure is a sweet lady.
Let's make sure that's not for a while. Yeah, let's make sure that's not for a while. okay?
What's one thing you think we ought to change in Port Royal?
I don't know if I want to change a whole lot. I want to see progress. I want to see property values maintained. I would like to see the port developed. But I don't think I really want to change a whole lot,
Okay, that's fair.
because that's what everybody comes here for, is what it is,
Glad to hear that.
you know? If you change that, then we'll move somewhere else, you know?
Glad to hear that. And my last question, I always like to ask, how would you describe yourself only using one word?
Grateful.
Good. That's a good word. I like that. You have any questions of us? We've asked a lot of questions. You have any question you'd like to ask us?
I understand there's going to be a steering committee, and who that represent?
Actually, the steering committee is looking at the same corridor, but it's actually a little bit different. The steering committee is going to actually issue a report to the corridor about things that are discovered. The steering committee is going to be a combined effort with a private developer, 303 Associates, and the town of Port Royal and Beaufort County. Wednesday night, we'll decide on the Port Royal representatives that'll be on that steering committee. We expect that work will be completed in probably less than 6 months. And then there's going to be reports that come out of there that'll go towards the redevelopment commission, because as we try to determine some of the things that are about that, and then the redevelopment commission will pick up and keep it going, is the idea of that. So we're making that decision on Wednesday of who the Port Royal, but it'll be 3 people from the town of Port Royal, most likely 2 council members and a staff member is what we're leaning towards. And 303 Associates will have 3 members, and the county member is already, Alice Howard has agreed to serve for the county. This is her district.
That's all I've got. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Well, hold on, I have a couple of questions or two. So when you think about that Riverboat Road corridor, what we talk about as a bridge to Burger King, what is it that you would like to see change in that specific corridor? I understand how we all feel about the town, but what about that corridor?
I don't want to see any more storage places, auto parts stores. I'd like to see more retail, maybe a combination of retail with apartments above. Maybe some restaurants. I'm really not sure because I think when I think about Rebo, I think it's different than like Paris, and so I just don't want to put anything in there that would take away from the destination that the village is, and I don't want to take away from that. But I will give that thought.
And maybe that's a little bit of why we're doing them separately and not as one, because we need them to be dealt with maybe in that way. The other thing is your resume, a lot of criminal justice background in your resume. And one of the big concerns that I have for the Riverboat Road corridor, and all of us do, is the way it's used as a thoroughfare. And do you believe that some of the things that you've learned in that world and training could help us understand traffic patterns and how to calm traffic and how to deal a little bit with that? Tell us a little bit about how you can bring that to the table.
Well, a lot of that is just common sense. You don't want this to be a thoroughfare for 18-wheelers to get from Bluffton to wherever they're going over here.
Ladies on.
Yeah, and so there has to be some I think some impediments that would cause them not to want to use that as a thoroughfare. Traffic control devices. You know, I wish there was a bridge that went over Ladies Island over Port Royal, and so we wouldn't have to deal with that. But right now, I guess that's the only main thoroughfare through there. But I think you'll have to strictly use traffic devices and enforcement to keep that down. I don't know how we would escape it any other way at this point.
Very good. Well, really, we thank you all. All of us thank you for your time coming in here. As we said earlier, we'll be taking the vote on Wednesday night. Once again, we appreciate your willingness to serve for the town of Port Royal and give back to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you could ask
Thanks,
Stephen Ledrick to come on in.
Thanks, Dick. Have a good one.
Thank you.
No problem.
Nope.
Good evening, Stephen. How are you?
Doing well, thank you.
Well, first of all, we'd like to thank you for being willing to come forward and join one of our boards and commissions. The board and commission we're talking about here tonight is the Redevelopment Commission. And the Redevelopment Commission has changed over the last couple of months. The town took a look at the existing Redevelopment Commission and decided they wanted to focus that commission in, not in what they do, but in where they do it. So we took a look at that rather seriously, and we're looking for a group of people that are willing to work on what we call the Riverboat Road corridor, Burger King to the bridge, or bridge to Burger King. And that aspect of it, and looking for people to willing to serve on that. So what we'd like to do here tonight is for you to kind of introduce us, tell us whatever it is you want to do. Council has some questions for you, and then we'll move on from there. So it's your turn.
All right, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity here tonight. As far as my interest in this, I am a resident of Edinburgh Avenue. Been there for going on 4 years. So through that time, we've obviously, we're just closing the port project at that point, and was excited about it when I first closed on my house, and then things just kind of slowly turned into what they are now, which is now re-excitement in that project. Obviously, that area has a fair amount of opportunity that's available to it through it, and it's obviously connected to Rebo as well. So I guess my interest in this really started from where I live and how all of Rebo and the port project and all of that sort of will change our little neighborhood, if you will. But I have background starting at KPMG back in the 80s, where I audited lots of entities and then moved into the world of insurance and spent most of my corporate life managing various finance groups and such in large insurance operations. You know, I have an interest in this town, clearly. I have sort of a financial head in everything that I've done in my life. I think I have some ideas, you know, nothing that's at all concrete. I've never built anything commercially, so I really don't have any, you know, experience in that regard to offer, besides just an analytical mind and, you know, sort of the variety of what I've done in my life.
Thank you for that, telling us a little bit about yourself. And we've got some questions, and I'll start from the left this time. Jerry.
Okay, what is your biggest strength? What do you think, what would you consider your biggest strength?
I guess I would say my ability to listen and digest information from a variety of sources before kind of developing my own opinion. I've often been described in board settings and things as the one that speaks last, sometimes out of the room. If there's some power within the room that I feel isn't necessarily going to be able to be dealt with, besides maybe some interactions outside of the room. So I feel like I like listening first, and then kind of not formulating my opinion out of that, but using that to sort of, I guess, solidify it. Let's say that.
That's good. So Mayor DeVito said it was the bridge to Burger King. What would be your vision for that piece of that stretch of road there? What do you see going on through there?
Yeah, it's clearly a challenge as I moved here and I saw the amount of traffic, you know, depending upon the time of the day. Clearly, the state has sort of tagged it as the way to the islands, right? And we're stuck in the midst. So we have a huge challenge of softening, calming, whatever the right word is, to let people see and have them pause enough to stop and see what we're about. And so how that sort of plays out, I've looked at some of the designs that were filtered in the last year. I guess they did that redesign. There was a lot of good ideas, I think, in that plan. You know, I didn't have any objections to what I was seeing. In fact, I liked sort of the use of trails and sort of the sharing, if you will, knowing that we're not going to stop commerce. You know, that's going to happen. But ways that we can slow it down and sort of get our sort of peace, if you will. People, you know, not flying at the speed of sound, so they don't even know what we're about.
Right. Well, okay, that's cool. Do you have any questions of me?
No.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
No, we really appreciate that, and you kind of answered a lot of the questions that I had in that. statement, so
Okay.
I don't, you have something, Ward?
No, actually, Jerry asked my first question.
Yeah, so I don't have any this time.
He answered the
got-
traffic
you
and
got-
everything.
You did a great job of kind of answering some of the things that we're really concerned about. Like we talked about in the beginning, decisions we made on Wednesday
Yeah.
about who's going to sit on this commission, and we look forward to you, if you're a part of it, and working with the town and the people and the citizens. So
Great.
thanks again for being
Sure.
willing to come forward and do this. We know that it's
Yeah.
difficult always to volunteer for public stuff, but we appreciate your willingness to do so.
Thank you.
And I'll quickly go ahead and, Vaughn, Mr. Vaughn,
Yeah,
ask him to join us.
very good. I will. Thank you.
I don't think Vaughn was here.
He's not here, is he?
No.
He's not here. I didn't think I saw him either.
I just one gentleman I didn't know. I thought it was him.
No, can you ask Mr. Dick Stewart, Richard
Dick Stewart,
Stewart,
okay.
please to come on in?
Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.
See you, bud.
Thanks again.
So we'll hold this to the last minute in case he shows up, but if not, we'll pull it out.
Did he say he was coming?
He did not. He didn't respond.
But he applied,
He did apply.
but didn't respond.
He took all my tissues when I came out here crying.
Good evening, Dick. And first of all, thank you for your willingness to serve the town of Port Royal. What we're here for is the redevelopment commission. And the town council took a look at the redevelopment commission over the past couple of months. And we've refocused them, but not in what they do, but in where they do it. And we're coming back and looking for 5 members who are willing to work on what we call the Bridge to Burger King Remote Road Corridor. Bridge to Burger King. It's the easiest way to describe the town limits for a lot of people. They understand what we mean by that. So we're looking for 5 people that are willing to serve and work into that corridor in that way. We appreciate your time to do that. We're going to give you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself, why you want to do that, and then council may have some questions for you, and then we'll go on from there. So it's yours, table.
Okay, thank you. A little background, I grew up here, graduated Beaufort High School, '67. Some of you will remember that from old movies on TV. Went off to college, then went to Atlanta for about 28 years, a couple years on the West Coast, primarily in the wireless business, and retired in '98, moved back here under the theory that I would get out of the business of building businesses and turning businesses around and would sort of be some other guy than that guy. Turns out you take your pathologies with you wherever you go, and if you're an entrepreneur and you fix stuff and build stuff and do stuff, my friend Beak Webb came to me and said, Dick, you need to buy this building. I said, why is that? He said, well, it's terrible shape, and the people who got it can't do anything with it. One of them's husband has died, and he said, Whitlam's got it, and so that was Old Bay Marketplace, so we bought that and fixed it up. And a bit of a story about that, but I won't go into it. But the theory that I operated under is that Sharon and I did well in business, and we had an opportunity as we were selling one of those businesses to do pretty well. And I sat down with Sharon, and we went through some analysis and said, we're not cars and planes and fancy folks like that. We're not going to be that. People don't want to be that person. But what's our number? If all debts are paid, our children get their education, and we want to live a certain life, and we want to be a certain way, what's that number? We came back to that number, added 25% to it, and so when we negotiated that transaction, that's the number we got. And each year, that increases by the greater of 3% or CPI based on the transactions we engaged in, plus I got some other tax-free assets that I've been investing in real estate. So in my background, I spent about 9 years with Motorola when I was with them, just about to get close to retirement, but I found out I didn't like being a part of a corporate machine that kind of chews off your sharp edges and stuff, and so I became an entrepreneur again and joined MCI when they bought the wireless business from Western Union. MCI was going through lots of changes, and they basically sold the company to Craig McCall a couple years later, and I went out on my own and started building the wireless business that I built. That took about 8.5 years. My partners were Chase Manhattan, the Carlyle Group out of DC, John Hancock, Norwest Financials, and the Advanced Technology Development Fund. We took about a $9 million equity investment and sold it for $480 million with no debt in that mix, and they were all happy. After that, just as I was winding that down, I started buying some towers and some mountaintops in the Atlanta area where I knew it. And after I sold that other business, we were completing the tower with subcontractors about every 27 hours. And so we were sort of rolling through the area. But what we did in that was we had a couple of mountaintops that if you were going to build a cellular system in Atlanta, you had to do business with us if you were going to get on the air. We didn't view that as a gate where we should extract something from someone. We viewed it as a door where we should invite people to come in and make it easy for them to do more with us. Over a period of time, that worked out well for us, and we developed relationships with counties and towns in that area. And there were about 70 counties we were dealing with and about 139 municipalities. And what we found is they all had the same desire. They want to have good services for their citizens. They want to have as few towers as possible. They want to have them in places that create a lot of confusion, and they want to have it done in a manner that was welcoming to people who need a place to put towers, as opposed to somebody who wanted to have a tower just because they didn't want to do business with somebody else. And so that worked out pretty well, and then we sold that business when I came here. Now, I've been here for 22 years, which is longer than my normal 9-year cycle. And what I like to do as a personal preference is to really dig into things and learn a lot about them. I learned a lot about wireless and state and local government markets in Motorola, which is what I was managing when I left. I learned a lot about how to build a business, how to finance a business, how to get a startup going, and that's worked out well. And then I learned out about the tower business, how to do that pretty well. And the one overriding thing I learned that has stood with me all these years is you need to surround yourself with people who are smart, preferably smarter than you. You need to trust them and give them some authority, which I've been able to do and able to do here. And you need to be in a position where whatever you're doing is stimulating and it needs to keep you interested. If you don't like what you're doing, you are not going to be successful in living a successful life. So over that period of time, we're not like a developer. We've never bought property and subdivided it, sold it off, paid taxes, and hope it made sense. We're what we describe as real estate investors. We like to own the real estate. We like to rent it to people. We like to get a lot of checks that way. We like to increase the number of checks and the size of checks, and that's what we do. But unlike most folks, we aren't apartment developers. We aren't shopping center folks. We aren't office buildings. We own some shopping centers. We own some apartments. We own some office buildings. We own some restaurants. We own some hotels. We sort of got a little of all of that because it's interesting. But the overriding issue of what we've done is to try to do redevelopment. What I saw happen in Atlanta was a sprawling of Atlanta across North Georgia led to lots of strip centers, lots of cars, lots of highways, made trips that I used to go see people and go to dinner or a baseball game with them. You just couldn't be sure you'd get there because the traffic's going to be such that you'd have to allocate 2 or 3 hours. So when we were looking at, when it used to be 30 minutes, when we were looking at what we wanted to do here, we hope we can avoid becoming that kind of place. I spent a number of years in Bluffton before I moved over here later in my high school career. When I go back to Bluffton, I can't quite figure out where Bluffton is anymore. So if I look at the town of Port Royal, and I look at it from our lens that we've done things through, you have a gateway, you have an opportunity. You also have some real challenges in that whatever's going to happen with the port's coming, you guys get to manage that. Congratulations. We also have what I would describe as sort of an inertia here locally in that we have not done some things that they have done in other places. Congratulations to you for understanding the role a redevelopment commission can play. The redevelopment commission, as I understand them, was created as a possibility by the state legislature because people wanted to get some things done in other parts of the state. They'd use them well. But a redevelopment commission is your unpaid workforce to do something that you want to see done. It is not some independent group out here wandering around telling you what you need to be doing for them. As I look at the bridge to Burger King area, it's the truck route to the islands. So if you're bringing a truck in from Charleston, you're told to come down Paris Island Gateway and drive right through that area. That doesn't make for a great program. If you've got a handicapped guy on one side of Rebo Road and he's taking his wheelchair across the street to go drink every night at the place across the street over there and then come back, you know, it makes you nervous about that kind of guy. It made me nervous as years went by, but he went on to his reward, so I hope nobody's doing that now. But we have this challenge here in that you've got this river of people and this river of money moving up and down Rebo Road, and you got property that's used for things like many warehouses. You've got property there at the corner of Edinburgh and Rebo that used to have a building on it. You'll remember that they repaired video games and stuff. We tore that down years ago and sold it to folks who were going to do things, and now they've torn the other building down, and somebody else out of New York owns it now. But you got that, you got vacant property up by Sutcliffe, you've got some, what I would describe as less than ideal investments along Rebo Road for a corridor that should be your major tax generating corridor. In our firm, we did Beaufort Town Center, which you're familiar with, and I don't think that's right for here, but in the period of time that we've been there, property taxes have gone up a little over $520,000 a month, and that's not 0 to 520, that's the increase. Accommodation taxes and hospitality taxes are probably generating right at $180,000 a month. It's generated about 170 jobs. And it's also reduced traffic because on both ends of ours, we connected it to the passageways on the back roads. What you learn out of that, you get this, and you learn that dealing with South Carolina DOT, dealing with Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer, not all of them, Joe, just some of them, the new guys. Dealing with all of those regulatory people, dealing with the stormwater issues, dealing with the various sort of challenges we have from state and federal regulations if the Corps of Engineers gets involved, is an incredibly complex and expensive thing. When I deal with what I refer to as professional investors, they say to me, well, why don't we just go out here and buy 30 acres and do this? And I said, well, we don't do that. That's not what we do, and I hope you won't either. But there's no reason that shouldn't be a commercial contributor to the quality of life throughout this town. I saw in the census, as you did, that your population is now bigger than the city of Beaufort's, but your commercial tax base is a fraction of theirs. That's not all because their downtown is doing well. It's also because of other things that have happened there. But what you've got along Rebo Road with the flow of traffic and the flow of people and the number of people who want to move here is the opportunity to kind of do it over, to fix some of those things. Now, your average property owner here consists of one of two kinds of people. Typically, it's somebody who's owned it a long time, or somebody that recently bought it and not sure what they're going to do with it. Sometimes they bought it and they have a plan for it. Having the opportunity to sit down with people and talk about what you'd like to see, and by that I mean not what I'd like to see, but what the town would like to see, and you're the representatives of the people who make this town what it is, and how to help them get from where they are to where they're going inside South Carolina with the South Carolina DOT, with the civil engineers that know what they're doing, and with the other folks like that. And the whole alphabet soup of opportunities out there, whether it be JETA or be MCIPs or BIDs or TIFs, or this goes on and on, CDFAs, it's all sort of out there. And then you got this interesting character in the middle of this called Uncle Sam. And he's got a chunk of pretty valuable waterfront property in your town. Two of them, in fact. What's his plan? Does his plan match up with your plan? I don't know. What I do know is I've had several calls from a developer who would like to put 50,000 square feet of healthcare space for the VA here in Beaufort. As he put it, I said, well, how about in Port Royal? He said, well, that's the same as Beaufort. I said, well, okay, whatever you say. He now tells me they're looking at a site in Bluffton because they think they can serve the Savannah market. Well, I don't know if that's the case, but what I want to understand is why shouldn't VA talk to DOD and see if there's an opportunity at the Naval Hospital ground for 50,000 square feet? I don't know the number of employees, but let's say it's 100. Let's say the average salary is $80,000. You people get better health care, you get an $8 million payroll when someone's not already producing taxes now. It's inside a fence, so it's not like it's some new area where you carved it out and put it next to somebody's house and going to object to it. That looks like to me something that would benefit the country, benefit the veterans, and be worth doing. Now, I mention this specifically because around 2002, the VA came to this area and they wanted to put a facility in for dementia patients. And they couldn't find one in the city. They couldn't find one in the county. I don't know if they came to the town. I'm not sure any of you were here at the time, but I never heard about them coming here. But when they couldn't find anything, they built it in Waldoboro. So people like World War II veteran Joe Lipsitz, when he arrived at dementia, he's in Waldoboro. And his wife, who's a few years younger and somewhat healthier, had to be driven over to see Joe when somebody could take him. My friend Norman Duncan used to do it a lot, all the way to Waldoboro. And so there's a federal payroll providing dementia services and health care to people who would clearly use them here, who was unable to, that investment was unable to be made here despite the fact that they want to be, because nobody took them by the shoulder and said, you know, this is something the town wants to see happen, let's see if we can help you. That needs to be fixed. We need to do a better job of that. I used to think that many of the folks that lived here were opposed to growth. I think there are many people that are verbal about being opposed to growth. And I think growth is like food. If you don't manage it well, it can get away from you. It's the holidays, give me a break. And so I look at this and I'm reminded of Emmett McCracken, who was the chairman of the county council when I came back. And I knew his family because his dad was a superintendent of schools when I was in school, and he was not going to let me play football when I moved over here because he wanted me to stay in Bluffton football there, but we got past that. And so I asked Emmett one time, I said, Emmett, what do you want to see? Because he has family in Holdings and Bluffton, active in Beaufort. He was chair of county council. He said, well, I don't want to see every fast food joint in the country. It's okay. It's one you don't want. What do you want to see? Well, I don't want to see every car dealership. He went through about 8 things he didn't want to see. He could not tell me one thing he wanted to see. And I don't suggest I have any of the answers, but I suggest to you that I have asked myself enough questions and been through things that might be efficient in helping other folks learn how to get there. But if you're going to do that and be effective in a redevelopment commission, there's 3 things you have to promise to the folks that you occupy. One is never going to embarrass you, not going to surprise you, and going to listen to what you tell us. Now, if there are 3 of you that tell me that's what we should do, and then 2 of you tell me that's what we can do, I'm going to respectfully request that you guys get into a room somewhere and give us some answer, because I really would like to know a little more than that. In my view, whether it's this body or a redevelopment commission or any other body, is when the body votes, that's the voice of the body. It's not the voice of the individual anymore. That's not what they show you on TV, and that's not what they show you on social media, but I think that's a duty of care we all have. Years ago, I ran for county council and was elected. Little did I know what I had done. And if you think it's hard with 5 people up there, try it with 11. It gets really interesting, particularly when people in Hilton Head have no knowledge of a lot of the stuff that's over in this part of the county. One of them told me not too long ago, so there's a port in Port Royal? I said, yes. I really thought that was named for the plantation. I said, no, I don't think that was the order in which that happened. But when I got to county council, I found that many people had no idea what they wanted to see either. They would wait until they heard something. And then I began to see a pattern where some individuals would be very animated. Oh, I got a lot of calls on this. People are really upset. We got to do stuff. So I would always kind of get a break and ask them, look, how many calls you get? It was never more than 3. It was usually 1 or 2. But they got so few calls because people felt so disengaged that when they got 3 calls, it was like, oh, it's a big issue. We need to move the whole county in that direction. So I asked them, did you call anybody and ask them what you thought? No. I said, well, why don't we do that? He said, I don't have time for that. I said, okay. And I say this to you because one of the opportunities you have with the size of this community is this room fills up with people that love this community or love to hear themselves talk. Ideally, some of both. When they do that stuff, they'll have their opinions and stuff, but they're not going to concern themselves with what they're asking you can do can be done legally. They're only going to be spending their time projecting upon you their wishes. But the reality is, you can't give everybody everything they want. You can't do that responsibly. You can't do it financially, despite some of the borrowing bills I see coming out of Congress. It's just not responsible. But what they have to consider is it useful to have a redevelopment commission as a group of people that are looking at business alternatives that can provide you the answer to a question in the Bridge to the Burger King arena that says, if you do this, this is the financial implications on the front end, the financial implications on the back end, and these are the reasons you can make those decisions. I'll use one last example and then I'll stop and take any questions you might have. But when I first came back and started looking around, I said, why is it that we, as the fastest growing arena in South Carolina, fastest area, why don't we have a 4-year school? And the answer that I got from people who should know and some who are involved with the state education system, college system, said, well, we got the next best chance to have one. I said, well, that's great. What's required for chance to become reality? And typically it was when you had 1,000 FTE or full-time equivalent students. And I thought that was intriguing. I said, so where's that written? Well, it's not really written anywhere, but that's what they did in Myrtle Beach, coastal Carolina. I said, okay. So rather than lose a friend after irritating them enough, I drove to Columbia and checked in a hotel and went over to the state archives and read everything about how coastal Carolina became a 4-year college. The local folks wrote a pretty good sized check. That kind of was the turning point when that happened. The second thing is they gave some additional funding, additional programs for stuff to happen. So I kept asking, so why are we putting this over by Sun City, which is the only place in the county that by ordinance or by covenant you can't have anybody under 55 living? It doesn't look like a natural fit for 18 to 21-year-olds to be right next to folks who won't let you live there if you're 54. And the answer was, well, they donated the property. So I began looking into that, talked to some Del Webb folks, and it's true. Del Webb's did a survey of their potential buyers. And the buyer said the number one thing they wanted was golf, the number two thing they wanted was continuing education. Continuing education can be very expensive. So what they did is they donated the acreage to the university and put a big sign up there that says USCB coming soon. And they sold that sizzle to their buyers without having to cook the steak. And the University of South Carolina and Columbia said, yeah, that's a pretty good spot over there. In fact, 35% of it was wetlands. There's another story. So Sharon and I had had about enough of this. We might, one day we may. But whatever happens, it's something people in Columbia will give to us when they are ready for us to have that gift. I now describe that as when the nice people in Greenville and Columbia and Florence and Charleston all decide, and they can decide we should have a university here because we're nice people, we deserve it. I have never found an incident where that actually happened, but that was the theory we were operating on. So we agreed to form a group, and we formed a Citizens for a 4-Year Education, had some little pins made, put up a couple of billboards, and had a session over at the university at the Center for the Fine Arts, about 350 people in the auditorium seating. And we filled the stage. On this side, it was the head of the Air Station, Naval Hospital, Parris Island School District, Beaufort Memorial, and a whole host of elected folks from around the region. Dr. Larry Rowland introduced him as the most powerful group assembled on the stage since somebody was there in the 1850s, which was a little bit before the 1860s when there was a significant downturn in that campus. And so we went across there, and I had the gentleman who was a representative from Walterboro was the first elected official sitting over here. And every elected official I had talked about this said, you know, this is a state issue. It's not anything we can do here locally. So the guy at the air station started, and the commanding officer said, we need a 4-year university. It's good for the enlisted people. It's good for the officers. It's great for their families. It might be the sort of thing that helps this base prosper and be successful a long time. Well, in Beaufort County and in Royal, you kind of lean in when that happens. And you could hear the sort of come across the audience. The Naval Hospital person said, if you're going to attract good medical personnel, you're going to attract the people you need, you're going to have the quality of life you need a 4-year university. Okay. And the Parris Island guy, being a Parris Island guy, somewhat more, I'll describe it as direct, said, you know, that's a pretty silly question. Of course we need it. Everybody needs it. My people need an education, your people need education, all these Marines need an education. Next question. Okay, great. So then we went to the school district, and the school district said we should be training our teachers to teach about this place here because the teachers we're hiring are from somewhere else and they don't really know this place. Then you went to the Beaufort Memorial, and he said the same thing as the hospital, Naval Hospital. If you're going to have medical professionals, you've got to have the richness and the opportunities the university presents. So now everybody's on board from all that, and we all get sick, and we all like our military. So you go to the first elected official, and he said, Dick, I really can't say much. I don't really have much in that district. I said, well, that's fine. What I'd like for you to say, if you don't mind, is that you will do everything you can to help with this. He said, I can't do much. I said, well, that's why it makes it so easy. And so he said, I'll do everything I can. And every person on that dais, because they saw 350 people in the audience that wanted this to happen, were fully supportive. About 6.5 months later, we passed a $30 million TIF bill that funded the start of the USCB campus in Bluffton and the TCL campus in Bluffton. That was the amount we agreed to. That TIF bill, and this is why I'm mentioning it to you, was supposed to pay off over 30 years. It paid off over 9 years. After it was paid off, the county transferred the ownership of those two campuses to USCB and TCL. I thought that was a pretty good win for the rest of us, and I think that is very helpful in maintaining things like the quality of our water, the quality of our life, and educational opportunities for young people. That wasn't because we did that forum. All we did was have a forum so people could listen to other people who had something to say. If you choose to put me on this redevelopment commission, I won't surprise you. If I embarrass you, it won't be on purpose, but I've got 2 small grandchildren and a wife who tell me that sometimes that can happen unintentionally on my part. And the last thing is, it's not my town. I didn't run for office and get elected to do what you're doing. You did. You should call these shots, but you need good information to do that. I read a lot, and I'm stepping back from my business. I've got Courtney Worrell, who's doing a great job in the commercial business. She runs the shopping center, she runs the office building, she runs most of our development activity. Jonathan Sullivan is a hotelier and was a #1 employee at Marriott for a number of years. He runs the 2 hotels we have and the 2 hotels we have in planning, one in this town, and he will continue to do that. I'm stepping back to devote more time to reading and thinking and to doing some other community services. I'm rotating off of some volunteer boards, and this opportunity comes along at a time when I think my experiences in real estate, my regulatory experience and other things can be helpful in doing some things that you want to see happen. When I read in the newspaper, which is always risky, but I read in the newspaper that you guys would like to see some commercial development on Reba. It made perfect sense to me. When I read in the newspaper that your population's bigger than Beaufort's, but your commercial budget's smaller, I said, well, if I were to go down there today and says, how much would you like the bridge to Burger King region, how much additional tax revenue would you like for that to create? That would be accommodations, hospitality, and property taxes. My guess is most of you would have an answer to that. If you did, it would be a range probably. You ought to have an answer to what can happen there. You ought to know the difference. In my studies, I hear a lot of people, particularly in smaller towns, and this is one, they're confronted by what happens when Walmart comes to town. We've avoided some of that here, and you're going to be successful, I think, here because of what you're doing with the port. But they always think of that as a big economic driver. Well, because of the acreage taken up by Walmart and its parking, if you look at it on a per acre basis, I'm not sure Walmart in Beaufort is generating more tax revenue than Paris Avenue is in Port Royal. I can tell you on a per acre basis, it's not competing at all with downtown Beaufort. But if you look at that corridor from the bridge to Burger King, there's an answer you should have. It's not like it's a residential street. It's a truck thoroughfare. It's not like something where the average person with a load of groceries or a cart full of groceries or 2 babies in a stroller are going across that road unless it looks very safe, because it's not going to feel very safe when that truck goes past you. Those are complex answers. Your comprehensive plan says you want public transit on that location and other places. Well, if the bus is going to stop, there got to be enough people there to get on and get off, or it's not going to stop. It won't work. You'll have to subsidize it forever. Hopefully that won't occur. Some decisions have to be made if you're serious about that. We played a role back in 2004 or 5, getting a Tiger grant for a public transportation system that's going to run through Beaufort, down to Port Royal, and back up to the university, and hospital, and around. This was planned and applied for, and Jenny Kozak, who was with Locock, went and spoke in Seattle about what a wonderful job getting this grant. Well, nobody had asked the county if they provide the matching funds. When we got back and I talked about providing the matching funds, the county said there's not enough traffic for this, and so despite all the hoopla, despite being the only grant recipient in the Carolinas, despite having gone to Seattle and bragged upon all this great work here, it just disappeared into the sands because of lack of support from the people who should have been asked first. I have gone on much longer than I planned to, so I apologize. It's not 8 o'clock yet.
Got 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
I better call Sharon. I better call Sharon and tell her to start taping it.
But that
Very
ain't
good.
gonna help us.
I had no questions.
Questions?
No questions.
I think you answered all of mine in what you said there, so I appreciate that very much. As we talked about earlier, what's going to happen now tonight, if we have one more interview tonight, we're going to deliberate a little bit on that, and on Wednesday, we'll be seating this commission.
I have a question.
Start
Go.
to say, Councilman.
How would him serving on the redevelopment affect 303 Associates being on the steering?
Well, two answers. First, the redevelopment commission is not participating in the steering commission.
Okay.
We are going to deliver a product to the redevelopment commission at the end. So from the aspect of that, if Dick is going to sit himself on the steering committee, which I believe is your intention, he will have a precursor to what's going to get delivered to him as part of the redevelopment commission as well. they do, they have some ability, and I've thought a little bit about this conversation, they have some ability to allocate dollars and spend money, and that's something he, as if he serves on the commission, is going to have to be cautious about, like any of us are,
Right.
with ethics and whether or not it's appropriate to be part of the final decision. You can always be part of the discussion. It's the final decision that you have to be cautious of. That's something we're going to have to watch as overseeing the redevelopment commission.
And that
That's
was-
everything's
and
done
that was
appropriately.
my, I guess,
Yeah.
the perception.
Appreciate you
Exactly.
thinking about that, because I have thought about that as well.
May I? add
Please,
a little bit to-
address that some more.
The steering committee is a defined project, and if it gets completed on the time schedule that's currently expected, that work would be completed in April, which would be here before we know it. The South Coast Cyber Center, which I sit on the board of, as does Councilman Phillips, has received a $450,000 grant, and part of that grant is they've paid a consultant who is studying how to build a cyber ecosystem economy here. And in that process, they're looking at where that might be located, what it might do, and a whole series of things, plus working with USCB and TCL. That result is probably going to be in March. The county is doing some stuff for transportation planning, which they hope to have in sometime around April or May, that may lead to them putting a referendum on for next year. And so I doubt that the redevelopment commission can get up and moving very much before April or May, just because of the nature of human dynamics. But if Port Royal is going to have a plan, and we're going to be ready with the output of those two studies when the time comes for the county to allocate for transportation, then the timing would be such that that would be over before that would be a problem. Now, let me just mention something else. As you may know, Mr. Phillips is fortunate to be married to Jenny Phillips, who we're fortunate to have as a part of our company. We have not had problems with this in the past, but there's a couple of folks that lately made some noise about it. Here's my view on that, because I was asked when I was in the county council. The state of South Carolina has a regulatory construct that says you may not recuse yourself except under certain circumstances. It showed up on county council because we had 2 or 3 folks that were regularly recusing themselves because they don't want to appear to be voting for controversial matters. I would encourage everybody to be comfortable with that, look into it and do what you need to do, but we're cognizant of those things. Don't see any conflicts there, wouldn't expect any conflicts there. We also own some property in the district. If our property is going to be impacted by that, I need to step out early and make it very transparent to everybody early what's going on, and we will do that. Just wanted to add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. If you can ask Leslie Akers to join us.
It'll be easy to figure out.
He's the only, yeah, it'll be pretty easy to
Thank
figure
you,
that out.
sir.
Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
May have showed up, man.
Be careful going
No.
home. That's it, go dogs. Since Clemson ain't
Wait.
playing.
There you go.
Actually, the other one may have showed up after.
Final straw.
Unless somebody else showed up out there. You're the last one out there?
No, I'm the only one hanging in the hallway.
Okay, okay. Leslie, thank you so much for being willing to serve on our redevelopment commission. That's what we're here for tonight, is to seat 5 members on our redevelopment commission. The commission did exist before. Council has looked at the redevelopment commission, looked at their mission, their goal, and we redefined a little bit about what the redevelopment commission is about. And that definition was really geographically in nature. We're not asking them to do anything different than they did before, but we're asking them to focus on the redevelopment of the Reebok Road corridor, bridge, what we refer to as the Paris Island Bridge, Russell Bell Bridge to Burger King. That's our corridor. That's our area in the Reebok Road. And so that is what we're asking for the redevelopment commission to do. So we'd like to hear from you a little bit about is why do you want to serve? Who are you? What brings you to this point? And then we may have some questions for you. So the dais is yours right now.
Okay. My wife and I moved here in June from Northern Virginia. And I'm a computer scientist. I've spent most of my career doing computer security research, what we'll now loosely call cybersecurity research. I've been hacking computers since it took punch cards. And I spent about 35 years working for the Navy in the Center for High Assurance Systems. And after COVID hit and things, we decided that what do we really want to do when we grew up? And my wife had been through this area. We came down and looked at some houses and we liked it. So we bought a place over on Old Shell Road. I'm still a contractor. I spent a lot of years on site working for a Tier 1 defense contractor, still have a security clearance. My last year there, which was 2009, I did $52.3 million in revenue and ran a whole bunch of contracts. But I decided I wanted to get back to doing what I like doing, which is computer science. And so I opened up my own S-Corp and things in Virginia and started doing blockchain research. So now I do cryptocurrency and distributed finance and all of those types of things. So every time you see Bitcoin quoted on the news, I'm happy. So now I'm just my own sole prop here in town. And we intend to stay for the duration. I looked at the newsletter that I get every Monday, and I looked at the things that you said that you needed help with, and quite honestly, other than taking my can to the curb, recycling doesn't thrill me. My kids are grown and out of the house, so I'm not spending near as much time in the parks and things. So I do like walking around. We love walking the whole neighborhood every night. And then I saw the redevelopment, and I know, because I'm a member of the Digital Corridor, that there's a full court press afoot to make cybersecurity be the fourth big industry here in the area. And I've been watching what they're doing and going to some of their meetings. And I've talked to the professors at the school and things, and that has implications that could seriously impact the way that we live here. And, my background is telecommunications and networking and things like that. I'm not a real estate guy, and I don't play one on TV. But I know a lot about how to do 5G networking, how to make it secure, and, things like that. And that's something that I didn't know if you had. So looking at the list and saying, now that I'm semi-retired and enjoying walking down to the sands every morning, what could I do here in town? I'm also a SCORE volunteer with the Low Country SCORE chapter in Hilton. So I'm their tech SME, so I help people set up their routers and stuff like that. And this looked like the place that I could apply some time and effort that wasn't recycling or parks, something like that. That really kind of fit into my background, because if we really get the cyber business that they are trying to get, it's going to hit us. I think in a lot of ways that they are not anticipating, and that they really need to look at their planning. That's my story.
Very good. We've probably got some questions for you, Jerry?
Sure. Tell me again, I know you said I just don't remember. How long did you say you lived here?
I've been here since Memorial Day weekend.
Oh, wow.
21.
Okay, and you found out about this through the newsletter?
Yeah, what's happening in Port Royal that I get every Monday morning.
Right, well, good. I'm glad to hear that you've come forward and willing to serve the community. What's something that you feel like you could bring to the table?
Well, like I said, I'm not your real estate code guy, but I spent a lot of years as program manager, managing people, contracts, budgets, and having to execute on what people did for contracts. And I finally reached a point where I was the on-site program manager, and I really didn't like doing that all the time. That's why I left, but I know how to do it. And it looks like there's, at least on the cyber side, they need a little bit more organization.
Gotcha. What do you like the most about Port Royal?
I met more of my neighbors in the first month that I was here than I had met in Northern Virginia in 10 years.
Wow.
Because the people here don't have DC Metro face. They will actually look at me and talk to me and wave at me when they go down the road in their golf cart. It's nice and friendly, and my wife and I can walk around every evening and talk to my neighbors.
Very good.
And there's too many people in Northern Virginia who don't want to tell me what their job is.
What's one thing you like to change or improve upon at Port Royal?
There's a couple of things that I would change that you may or may not agree with. I think that the business license process needs to be streamlined a bit. And part of that has to do with the cybersecurity business. I think that we're going to have a hard time here in town attracting some of the businesses, and more so the people that we would want to be here who are relatively high income and would really like to hang out at the beach under the current business license policy. Only that your cyber business exists in cyberspace, not necessarily in my house. My furthest customers right now are in Sydney, Australia. I don't travel to Sydney, Australia. I Zoom with them, and I have for 5 years. So there's just some changes there in the way the technology works that it's, and it's not just here, it's everywhere that I've ever worked, that the process doesn't quite align. And now a few places like the state of Wyoming have made some changes to try to incorporate the idea of a cyber business, a virtual business that you have with people who are loosely associated with each other. It just doesn't fit into the current writing of the code.
Very good. Do you have any questions of us? Anything you'd like to ask?
I got a lot of questions. I tried to come to a meeting of this board in December, only to find out that when I got here that it wasn't meeting. And, you know, and that's part of why I applied, is I said I really wanted to come to a meeting first and get an idea of just how big of a hockey game broke out before I decided if I was going to throw my hat into the ring. So, how does the board report to you all after meetings?
Yeah, so think about it first of all in this way. The board is completely changed. So this is going to be a new board that's going to get to
Okay.
make some of those decisions. We as council would like to have kind of quarterly meetings. Redevelopment Commission may be a little bit different. There may be hot topics going on where we're actually hearing from you on a monthly basis. There are going to be other times where you're working on something and it's going to be final reports. This board is going to have to elect its own chairman. That chairman will be the direct conduit to us and along with staff members. So we are going to ask questions of the board and the board is going to be asking questions of us. So, in a lot of ways, whatever was going on before is now focused a little bit different because this is a specific zone, a specific project, and we've reduced the number on there so that we can have a good cohesive group that can work together and get this project done.
All right, guys, see, like, I went back and I read some of the previous minutes and things that everything I could find around what was happening, and I was just having a hard time figuring out exactly how this would work with you on this. And, for instance, I know that the county's Economic Development Corporation owns a couple of properties in that patch. They have a lot down near the Burger King and the Piggly Wiggly. They own a building up near the bridge, very close to the trail and things. So there's a whole bunch of different kinds of buildings in that range that it isn't clear what's going to happen with them. Have you all given any guidance or anything? Do you know about those? Are you working on some plan on how those sorts of things are going to be used in conjunction with the county?
There are two things that are happening at the same time. We, the town, have done things on the Riverboat Road Corridor. First one we did was a traffic study. That one was completed right before COVID hit, kind of slowed down a lot of what's happened with implementing the traffic study. The traffic study's been passed on to the county, who's looking at the traffic. We, the town, and a 303 Associates are together going to work on a steering for that area to come out with some goals in the same area. And now we're going to be handing it over to the Redevelopment Commission to do exactly what you just said. Find out what existing property owners are doing, meet with them, understand where they're going, and passing on the goals and the wishes of this council to property owners and see if we can't come to some way to redevelop those properties that are in need of redevelopment.
Okay. When it comes to the development of the port, how much interaction do you all still have with things that can be changed or extended out of the port? And I'll go ahead and give you the answer that I'm hoping for, okay? Which is, if there, you may not remember, but I sent an email to all of you.
And I
in
did
December.
respond to that email and told you.
Yes, you did.
Kevin was on the cyber and to please contact him.
Yep.
I think, Van, you responded. I don't know if
Yeah,
anybody else did.
a couple of you did, but I did about 5G networking. Because if they do what I think they're going to do at the port, they would not want to run physical wires out to every one of those boat slips and then try to maintain them in the saltwater. because that's a maintenance nightmare. They would put up several antennas and they would extend a 5G networking umbrella, which would be really fast. Now, normally that can be a little bit expensive, but we're right underneath that umbrella. And we want a lot of high-tech jobs to be here that don't have a big, light industry footprint or a big impact on things, so they could move into a short-term rental or a Airbnb, and we wouldn't know the difference as long as they were just using the network. The ability to expand that umbrella across the entirety of the old village should not be difficult if we get worked into what they're doing with Hargray or whoever is providing their service. So things like that could have a serious impact on our ability, to have better jobs working out of Port Royal without having to build a bunch of other buildings and get what I'll just loosely call a shiny object syndrome. Okay, because like I know that the cyber center people want to transition people from the military. And that's great. There's a lot of military work you can do. I did government contracting for 30-some years. I have a whole lot of T-shirts. But the cyber business, civilian cyber business, is 10 times bigger than the government business will ever be again. And you don't have to have a security clearance to do that. So the idea that you're going to put that business on the hospital or on the air base or something like that, you might transition a bunch of people who did some government contracts. But the hardcore work is going to be on the civilian side, wide open with other people that you're going to have to recruit to come here. So I think the answer to that is Port Royal is a great place to live. Those people would want to live here. It really doesn't matter if their business is here. It doesn't matter if their corporate office is here. If they're here, they're going to be making their money here, living here, enjoying living here, and we don't have to build a skyscraper.
To answer your question a little bit, currently there's a guidance documents for the Port Royal development, for the port redevelopment. There's a development agreement and a PUD, and town staff works with the developer to make sure it fits within that guiding document. That this council, the former council, the council before that, and the council before that have all put together. It's 17 years or 19 years in the making to get it to where it is. So we have some.
But just so that is what drove me to actually send you an application, because I think that the decisions that are made across all of those things have the possibility of impacting the way that we live here a lot without us ever having to plop a big building down.
Understood.
I have no questions, sir.
Questions? Very good. So process is as it stands right now. We're doing these interviews tonight. On Wednesday, council will vote and seat the people on the commission, and then the commission will have its first meeting from there and move on.
Okay. Do I need to be here Wednesday, or will you just notify
If you
me?
can be here, that would be great. It's your choice.
It will be live as well, too.
Yeah, you
Oh,
can,
okay, yeah.
you can watch it on Facebook as well.
All right.
All right?
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank
again
you.
for your willingness to serve.
Thank you. I like your
Okay.
sweatshirt.
Can you get the door for us? So council, that's the end of our interviews for this evening. What we do need is a motion to enter into executive session to discuss this personnel matter.
Make a motion that we enter into executive session to discuss the candidates for the redevelopment commission.
We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 She's taking minutes, right? Yeah, we gotta wait till she gets back over there.
Is anybody out there? All right.
Okay.